point one is that Marx says that if you don't have the right conditions, then a socialist revolution can't succeed, and those conditions weren't there in the Soviet Union, and that's why he correctly predicted that it would not be a successful revolution, and 75 years later it collapsed, and therefore he was proved right about that. But that's what I'm saying there is fairly standard Marx kind of stuff. But the thing that's new that I'm saying in the book is not only that, but also if you look at the course of Soviet history, even though we kind of get distracted because we look at the Soviets themselves, the Soviet regime claimed to be trying to build socialism. So we tend to look at, but we look at them on those terms. Did they build socialism or not? And we judge them as successful or otherwise on that criteria. But I think the same as with the development of capitalism in England, nobody was trying to develop capitalism. No, people were doing the things that made sense to them at the time. And the upshot of a load of different combined things was the emergence of capitalism. And what I'm arguing is that the Soviet period and the period just before it, from the 1860s, constitute Russia's capitalist revolution. That was Russia's bourgeois revolution. So in a really kind of basic way, you had Russia was definitely a feudal society in the 1860s before the serfs were free, emancipated, and it's now definitely capitalist. So there has been a transformation from a feudal society to a capitalist society. So in a way, whatever happened there, you can say, well, that was Russia's bourgeois revolution. The question is, does that then fit in with the way Marx described the emergence of capitalism out of feudalism in England? And actually, there are loads of striking similarities. All the processes, Marx has a kind of a checklist of things that must happen before you can have capitalism. And none of those things were in place when the Bolshevik Revolution happened in 1917. But the Soviets basically put them all in place, not because they were trying to put in place the conditions that would enable capitalism to arrive, but because mainly what the Soviet Union hardly ever had the opportunity to do things it wanted to do. As soon as the revolution had finished, there was a civil war that went on for ages. By the time that finished, they were devastated by the effects of World War I and the Civil War. So they had to kind of retreat. They had to think of the new economic policy, which was a bit of a flirtation with capitalism. But then when Lenin died and Stalin took over, he got rid of that, brought in the 5-year plans. Collectivization in Russia ticks a load of Marx's boxes and is exactly the same process, it plays exactly the same role as eviction and enclosure in England. Kick the peasants off the land, get rid of their ideas if they're any right to own or possess or occupy it, consolidate the farms into the small and scattered farms into big units that are capable of modernization, create this landless workforce who don't own anything, who can go and work in factories. That was the upshot. It wasn't the intention, but that was the upshot of Stalin's collectivization program. And Russia it was quite good. This idea about different economic structures being suited to different levels of development. The Soviet system was pretty good at industrializing from almost nothing to kind of 1950s level. That kind of invest a load of money in heavy industry, get a load of manpower in there, build stuff, pig iron, steel output, that kind of thing. It was pretty good at that. What it wasn't any good at was kind of keeping up with America in terms of the consumer society in the post-war period. Russians could see what was going on in America, despite attempts to stop them from seeing it. People knew what was going on, and they knew that what they'd got wasn't as good, and that caused some kind of discontent. And along with other things that the Soviet Union had suppressed, like kind of religion and nationalism and that kind of thing, there was a lot of kind of resentment building up. And the inefficiency of the system really is what, and coupled with this kind of internal resentment, is really what brought it down in the end. So, but then as the Soviet Union was collapsing, people like Putin, Abramovich, these guys were kind of waiting in the wings, positioning themselves to take over in this kind of capitalist oligarchs. So that's my argument in the book. That's the new bit in the book is that argument that you can see the Soviet experiment really as Russia's capitalist revolution.
Okay.
Even though no one intended it to be that.